She was just a poor village girl, forced into a marriage with a total stranger. But what she did not know was, he was hiding the crown of a kingdom, a heart broken by betrayal, and a secret that could change her life forever. But the biggest twist? Her own bloodline held the key to a forgotten throne. Stay till the end, because this is not just a love story. It is a tale of lies, legacy, and the courage to rewrite destiny. Before we begin this powerful story, make sure to subscribe and click the bell icon so you never miss our inspiring, life-changing content. Like and share the channel to support meaningful storytelling that goes beyond entertainment. Every tale we tell carries a deep moral lesson designed to uplift, enlighten, and transform. Poor village girl was forced to marry a stranger man, unaware he is a crown prince. I was never meant to be king. I was born under chandeliers, schooled by diplomats, dressed in silk, but shaped by silence. My father's eyes held only duty. My mother's smile was a myth spoken of in court, never seen in daylight. I was raised not to feel, but to obey. At 28, I had wealth beyond belief. But I had never once tasted love. And then came the scandal. My name, tarnished by a betrayal that cut deeper than any blade. A foreign investment partner. My closest advisor. My childhood friend. They left me bankrupt in trust, though never in gold. My father called it dishonor. My advisors called for damage control. The royal court demanded one thing: marriage. Not for love, but for image. Find a girl the people will adore, they said. Someone poor, humble, a villager. I signed the paper in silence. I did not ask her name. I did not see her face. I only knew the wedding would be held in her village, miles from the palace. I arrived at the ceremony surrounded by guards. The air smelled of wet clay and jasmine. Children peeked from behind wooden doors. The whispers were endless. She was forced, someone said. Her family owed a debt, another added. And then I saw her. She wore a faded red dress. Not silk, not lace. Just fabric stitched with trembling hands. Her eyes did not rise to meet mine. Her hands did not lift to accept the flower garland. She was not trembling from joy. She was shaking with fear. I remember how heavy the silence felt when we were left alone that night. She stood near the door, her back straight, like a prisoner awaiting judgment. You do not have to be afraid, I said. She said nothing. Do you wish to leave? Still, silence. Then finally her voice, low but steady. I was told if I did not marry you, my brother would be taken to prison. My chest tightened. I had not known. I had not agreed to this cruelty. I left the room. That night, I fired the minister who arranged the deal. But the damage was already done. To her. To me. The next morning, she served me tea. She had not run away. She had not cried. She had simply accepted her fate. Days passed. She never asked questions. Never smiled. But she cleaned my clothes by hand. She left warm food by my door. She stitched the buttons on my shirts even when I said it was not needed. One evening, I returned to find her crouched near the fire. The pot was empty. Her stomach growled. You have not eaten, I said. She replied, you needed strength. I can wait. My heart cracked open. I had been taught to lead nations, but I had never learned kindness. Not until her. I began to notice everything. The blister on her finger. The way she always left the last piece of bread for me. How she quietly prayed at dawn, her eyes closed, her voice barely audible. I wanted to apologize, but I did not know how to begin. So I started with small things. I cooked rice one morning. It was burnt. But she smiled for the first time. I bought her a blue shawl. She cried, not because of the gift, but because I remembered her favorite color. She began to tell me stories. Of her father who died in debt. Of her brother, who dreamt of becoming a doctor. Of her own dreams, buried. And I listened. Because for the first time, I wanted to hear. Then came the royal summons. I was to return to the capital. Alone. They said the village girl had served her purpose. She was no longer needed. But I could not leave. Not now. Not after what she had become to me. Not after I had learned the language of her silence. I told her, "Pack your things." She asked, "Will I be a servant in the palace?" I said no. She said, "Then what will I be?" I looked her in the eyes and answered. And just then, the door burst open. A soldier, panting, handed me a letter. My father had fallen ill. Gravely. The throne was now mine. But with one condition. A royal bride. Of noble blood. Not a girl from a village. Not her. I looked at her. She had heard every word. She was already stepping back. Already preparing to leave. I wanted to stop her. But duty roared louder than love. And so I stood there. Frozen. Torn. Between the crown and the woman who had taught me what it meant to be human. She did not cry. She simply nodded, folded her shawl, and turned to pack. I wanted to scream. To tear the crown apart, throw it into the fire, and tell her that nothing, nothing, meant more than her. But I stood still. Like a coward. My hands clenched into fists, useless by my side. She walked out without another word. No accusation. No plea. Only dignity. That night, I did not sleep. The walls of the palace were colder than ever. Even the silence sounded like judgment. My father's condition worsened. Advisors gathered like vultures. Each brought a proposal. Names of princesses, duchesses, political alliances. They dressed up greed as duty. But all I saw was her face. The girl who gave me warmth without asking for anything in return. I found her shawl under my pillow. She must have left it there. Folded. Soft. Scented faintly of soap and smoke. I held it to my chest. I could still feel her absence like a wound. The next day, I made a decision. I walked into the council chamber. All heads turned. They expected an engagement announcement. I gave them a truth instead. I will marry the woman who fed me when I was too ashamed to eat. Gasps echoed like thunder. She is not of noble birth, one minister hissed. She is not of noble blood, I corrected. But her heart, her sacrifice, her soul is royalty. Whispers filled the room. My uncle stood. This will disgrace the lineage. I stepped closer. Then let the lineage be cleansed by love. You will lose allies, another warned. Then let those alliances fall. My voice rose, not in anger, but in conviction. I would rather reign in truth than rule with lies. And I walked away. That evening, I rode back to the village. Alone. No guards. No gold. Only a heart heavy with fear and hope. She was sitting by the well when I arrived. Her face paled when she saw me. I dismounted and approached, slowly, as if nearing something sacred. I came to ask for your hand. She stared at me, silent. I knelt. I cannot promise you peace, or ease, or a quiet life. But I can promise you one thing. I will never let go again. Tears welled in her eyes. She reached into her pocket and took out something small. It was the button from the first shirt she had ever stitched for me. She had kept it. All this time. She whispered, I never wanted the palace. I only ever wanted you to stay. And I did. But fate does not like to be defied. The next morning, a sealed letter arrived from the capital. My father had passed away in the night. I was to be crowned king by sundown. With or without her by my side. I turned to her. Her eyes were wide. Not with fear, but with something deeper. Resolve. She touched my arm. And said. She touched my arm. And said. Then let us walk through fire together. My throat tightened. I took her hand. It was rough from years of hard labor. But to me, it felt like silk. We rode back in silence. But our hearts spoke with every shared glance. Every breath between us. As we approached the palace gates, the guards hesitated. Their eyes scanned her clothes, her posture. Still simple. Still unadorned. But I stood tall beside her. My future queen, I declared. Inside, the court had gathered for the crowning. The ministers stood lined in gold-trimmed robes, their faces masks of judgment. She walked behind me, head high, not with pride, but with quiet courage. When the high priest lifted the crown, he paused. Tradition demanded a noble bride stand beside the king. He looked to the elders. Whispers buzzed like hornets. But I took the crown myself, placed it upon my head, then reached back and brought her forward. Before the entire court, I took her hand and raised it. "This woman saved me," I said, "not from death, but from a life without purpose. She is not here because of politics. She is here because of love, because of truth." I turned to her. "Do you accept the madness of this life, the storms ahead, the throne, the judgment, the eyes that will never see you as enough?" She met my gaze, steady, and said, "I have lived my life unseen. That will not break me now." The priest swallowed his protest. He placed a silver band on her wrist, the mark of a royal consort. The hall was silent, until a single clap, then another, then a wave of applause that shook the pillars. Some clapped from belief, some from fear, but all understood. A new reign had begun. Later that night, in the stillness of our chamber, she stood by the balcony, looking over the city lit by lanterns. "You changed everything," I whispered behind her. She shook her head. "No. You simply remembered who you were meant to be." I stepped closer. "But you are the reason I became him." And just then, a sharp knock echoed at the door. It was the royal physician. His eyes, dark with worry. "There is something you must see," he said. He held a scroll, sealed in red. My father's final words. His will. And at the bottom, a name neither of us expected. One that would unravel a secret buried for decades. One that would change everything. We thought we knew about her past. My hands trembled as I broke the seal. The wax cracked like thunder in the silence of the room. The scroll was written in my father's handwriting. Sharp, stern, familiar. But what lay within those lines was nothing I had prepared my heart for. To my son. If you are reading this, I have returned to the earth, and my crown now rests upon your brow. You were born into royalty, but the burden of truth was never placed upon you, until now. I glanced at her. She stood frozen, watching my eyes race across the parchment. "There is a name you must know." Her mother's name, Amara. Her lips parted. That is my mother's name," she whispered. My knees weakened. The scroll slipped slightly from my fingers. Amara was once a servant in this palace. But she was more than that. She was the love I was never allowed to choose. The walls around me began to vanish. Time unraveled. My father, so cold in life, had written with fire in his veins. "I loved her, though I was bound by duty to marry your mother." When I was told she was with child, my hands were tied. I was told the child would never be accepted. They erased her from these walls. They erased them. My heart thundered. The lines between fate and blood began to blur. "That child is the girl you have just married." The scroll fell. My breath left me. She stumbled back as if struck. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. But the truth was written. Black ink, red seal, royal decree. We stared at one another. Bound by love. Torn by blood. Brother and sister? Husband and wife? The air was thick with a silence that screamed. Her legs gave out. I caught her before she fell. My arms held her. But my soul shattered. I wanted to scream. To rip the heavens apart for this cruel twist of fate. But she looked up at me. Tears in her eyes. "No. This cannot be true," she whispered. And in that moment, the physician stepped forward. "There is more," he said softly. He reached into his coat and pulled out a second scroll. Older. Worn. One my father had hidden from everyone. The truth was more complicated than he dared to write. I opened the second scroll with shaking hands. It began. There was a child born in this palace. But not to Amara. There was a child born in this palace. But not to Amara. The truth that haunts me is this. Amara was pregnant, yes. But the child she carried never lived to see the light of day. My vision blurred. My lungs forgot how to breathe. The scroll shook in my grip. She leaned forward, barely whispering. What does that mean? I steadied myself. When I was told she had lost the baby, I was broken. They said it was fate. That it was better this way. But a week later, another newborn was abandoned at the gates of the orphan quarter. A girl, wrapped in the same shawl Amara always wore, with eyes the color of hers. I asked no questions. I dared not. But I knew in my soul, that child was hers. And they lied to keep her from me. My knees hit the floor. The scroll slid from my hand and rested at her feet. She was trembling, but not from fear. From something deeper. A cry broke from her throat. Raw. From the pit of her soul. I always felt it, she whispered. My mother, she would weep quietly at night. She always told me, you are not meant to be invisible. She said I was born for something more. And now we knew why. She was not my sister. She was not a servant. She was the stolen daughter of a king. Hidden. Silenced. Raised in dust. But royalty in her bones. I crawled toward her. Lifted her chin. Our marriage, I whispered. It is not a curse. It is a reunion of bloodlines torn apart by lies. She stared into my eyes. Her tears were no longer of sorrow. They were of knowing. I am no longer afraid, she said. But before I could respond, the physician stepped forward once more. There is one more truth. He reached inside his satchel, pulled out an old ring. Golden. Weathered. Set with an emerald so deep, it looked like a forest trapped in stone. This belonged to Amara, he said. She left it with the child, the night she disappeared. She gasped. Her fingers reached instinctively to her neck, to the spot where she always said something was missing. He placed the ring in her palm. It fit perfectly. And then the physician said, she did not die. She was taken. And now she is waiting. She is waiting. Those 3 words struck like lightning. I felt the air shift. She clutched the ring to her chest, as if her mother's heartbeat still lived inside it. Tears spilled down her cheeks, but her eyes gleamed with something fierce. Hope. Where? She asked, her voice quivering. Where is my mother? The physician hesitated. His gaze lowered. She was taken by those who feared what she knew. She had learned of the betrayal, of the child swap, of the royal plot to erase her bloodline. She fled before they could silence her, but not far enough. 4 years, she was kept hidden, in a convent buried in the mountain passes of the north. No one was allowed to leave. No word ever reached us. Until now. He pulled a folded map from his cloak. Old. Stained. But marked with the seal of the royal guard. An informant sent word last week, he said. She is alive. But she is unwell. And she is asking for her daughter. Her lips trembled. I reached for her hand. We leave at dawn, I said. No guards. No carriages. No court. Just us. She nodded slowly, clutching the ring tighter. The throne could wait. A kingdom without truth was no kingdom at all. That night, she stood at the window again. The stars spilled across the sky like shattered diamonds. I wrapped my arms around her from behind. You are not just a queen, I whispered. You are the daughter of a woman who dared to defy kings. And now, the world will know her story. She turned to me. And ours? She asked. I smiled, though my chest still ached with the weight of everything ahead. Our story is just beginning. But just as the first light crept over the horizon, a sharp cry echoed through the corridor. A royal guard burst through the chamber doors.
Blood on his armor.
"Your Majesty," he said, breathless.
"You must come."
"Someone has broken into the royal vault. They have taken the scrolls and left behind a message." He handed me a torn piece of parchment. There were only 6 words. The girl should never have lived. Her face went pale. I stood frozen, rage coursing through my veins. "They are still watching us," I said quietly. "They know who she is now.
And they are not done."
We were no longer just fighting for love. We were fighting for legacy.
For justice. For truth.
And the storm was only beginning to rise.
We left before sunrise. No guards.
No royal banners. Only a worn map, a mother's ring.
And a promise.
The mountains loomed high. But she walked with purpose. The quiet kind that bends steel and awakens generations. Through winding paths and bitter cold.
We reached the hidden convent.
Walls covered in moss. Gates silent as prayer. Inside, time stood still. Old women in white robes moved like ghosts. Until one of them stopped.
Looked at her.
Dropped the tray in her hands. And whispered,
"Amara."
The name cracked the silence. The woman who had lived in shadows stood slowly from a wooden bench in the corner. Her hair was silver now. Her back slightly bent.
But her eyes.
They were mirrors. The moment they saw each other, there was no need for words.
Mother. Daughter.
2 souls lost in time. Now reunited in its grace. They collapsed into each other's arms. Tears washing away years of stolen memories.
I watched from the doorway. Not as a king. Not as a husband.
But as a witness to something sacred. We stayed there for days.
No titles. No threats. No courts. Just healing. Just truth.
When we returned to the capital, we returned as more than rulers. We returned as rebuilt souls. She stood beside me, not as the girl from the village, but as the daughter of a mother who survived, and the wife of a man who chose love over fear.
We changed laws.
We rewrote legacies. We freed others who were silenced like her.
Like Amara. And one day,
when the kingdom gathered to honor the queen, she stood tall and said, "Do not measure people by their past, nor by the dirt on their feet, but by the courage in their hearts.
Because sometimes,
royalty is not born,
it is revealed."
Moral of the story: sometimes life takes everything from us. Our name, our dignity, our dreams. But if we hold on to truth, if we walk with love instead of pride, we do not just survive.
We transform.
And in that transformation,
we become the light.
For those still lost in darkness, never underestimate a humble soul. Their strength is often forged in silence, and their love has the power
to rebuild kingdoms.
Thank you for listening to this heartfelt story. If it moved you,
share it, comment below,
and remind someone today, you are never alone.